Hello everybody, Deanna here, and thanks so much for being here. So today's video is going to be a reading wrap-up for the month of September 2022, and it's also going to be a bit of a reading journal walkthrough. So let's go ahead and get into it. So here is my reading journal September TBR that I had. So I had listed quite a few books on my TBR, and as you see, I did not get to all of them, but we're going to go ahead and go through what I did get to. So we're going to start with the cover page. So here are my books read for the month of September. I did end up reading about 6 books, one of them being a series or a trilogy, and I did have my quote for September as "to seek the stars, to serve the light, to guide the worlds," which is from that trilogy. So for September I went with a very fall-like theme in regards to just the craft paper I used and the stickers and things like that. So I also had used some kind of off-white dotted paper as well for my list, and I did not fill out the whole paper as you see, and you know, that's just something that happens. I think September was a bit of a slower reading month for me. I did get into a bit of a kind of almost reading slump, which does happen sometimes. I was a little burnt out from reading. I had some reading burnout, so that is okay. It was just, I think, based on some of the books I had been reading, but I feel like hopefully I'll be energized again now that we're into October. Maybe I'll get some fun reads this month. But let's go into the first book that I read. So the first book I read for the month was The Home for Unwanted Girls. I do have the paperback version of this book. I do have this on my channel. I've got a book review, so if you want to know more about this book, go ahead and check that out. But this one was a fun little spread that I did where I just copied that title that we saw, just kind of made it a little more cartoonish version, and I had like a little bit of the actual history because this book is historic fiction, so I had the actual history about the book here just to kind of remind myself of the actual history. Then I have a little few points here, and I just kind of talked about how I really did love this book. This book was a really great book. I really enjoy it. I think the subject matter was just a bit heavy, so it was something that kind of weighed on my mind a bit and definitely made me think about kind of things in the world, but I gave the actual book 5 stars because it was a fantastic book and I really enjoyed it. So that was The Home for Unwanted Girls. And then I read the big book that was all over the place, which was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. So this was a memoir that I ended up listening to audiobook version because I just find when it is a memoir and you have an audiobook that's been narrated by the actual author, that it is just so great to be able to listen to it because they put their own kind of tone and inflections and just their emotion behind the story into the narration, and Jennette definitely did that. Plus Jennette is a former child star, so she definitely has the credentials to be able to really put into that narration as well. And this book was so big and so popular is what I mean by that. It was just all over the place. If you haven't heard of it, I'm kind of surprised because it's just been everywhere. And so it was even hard just to get a copy of this book. So audiobook was definitely a more accessible means to get this for myself personally. So I really, really enjoyed this book. Really, really fascinated by Jennette and her story. I definitely want to, you know, just mention those trigger warnings that maybe you are aware of if you've heard of this book, but you know, there was some of the eating disorder, the abuse, and the SA that happens, so just kind of being mindful. She does give a bit of a behind the scenes look at life, but this story is more about, like the title would suggest, about her relationship with her mother and the kind of some of the trauma and issues that really came from that, and how she has worked to, you know, heal herself and move forward. So fantastic book, absolutely enjoyed it, absolutely loved it. I really, you know, for this I recreated a bit of the title without going too far with my artistic, because I'm not quite artistic enough to recreate Jeanette, because the actual cover looks like this and it's got her face on it, so I just took the urn and made my own little urn. But definitely recommend this book. Again, I have an actual book review on my channel, so if you want a more in-depth look at this, go ahead and check that out. But definitely 5 stars for me on this one. And I liked the pink and the yellow, because that was kind of the cover of the book, so I kind of used that to really kind of keep that same color story that she had on the book as well. So that was this one. Definitely a good read. Very highly recommend. And then we get into my book club choice, which was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. Always butcher that last name, apologize if I mispronounce that. But this was my book club choice. He is the author of The Silent Patient. I again have a video of a book review if you want more in-depth. Go ahead and check that out. So this is just going to be a bit of a quick look at my journal spread about it and the fact that I did read this book for September. I did enjoy this book. I had some mixed feelings. It's all in kind of my review if you want to check it out. But I really like this spread because I think I very much kept to like the color scheme of the cover here. I got the blacks with some of like the brownish kind of color going on, which I recreated with like the craft paper and things like that. And then I took quite a few times to draw out Persephone because I wanted to make sure that she looked awesome, as good as I could, especially that hair. And then I have just little elements from the book, like the pine cones, and like, you know, death is very much represented because this is a murder mystery. So we've got the skulls, plus she is the queen of the underworld, so she is the wife of Hades, so like death is just kind of synonymous with Persephone. But of course there's also a lot else. I'm not going to get into all of the myth of Persephone, but I did find that about this book is that they didn't get into it all either. There is a lot more to this story than really that was really touched on, and we just had a little bit of tasting of the Greek myth within this story. But I did have the pomegranate and like the sword and everything. Just I like how this turned out. I found it fun, and then I just put a whole bunch of my thoughts here because I had quite a few thoughts as you see, because this is just one of those books that kind of left me going like what. But yes, I have more in a video if you want to know more about this particular book. So that was it. That was the 3 that I got to from my TBR here. I did not get to any of these other ones. I just, again, like I said, I was just in a bit of a reading slump. Wasn't really feeling some of the books, especially since some of these books had a bit heavier themes, and I was just looking for something a little bit lighter because I was just in kind of a mood of I'm feeling a little too heavy. So then I ended up going to my mother-in-law's for a visit during the month of September, and I ended up borrowing some books. So my mother-in-law and I both have a really big love for Nora Roberts, so she ended up loaning me a Nora Roberts trilogy that I hadn't read yet. We were actually both surprised that I had read it, but I ended up borrowing this from her, and then I did a spread for each book in the trilogy. So this is a fun trilogy. Nora Roberts, if you don't know her as an author, very much romance. Haven't heard of her, I'm surprised, because she is like one of the queens of romance. Absolutely love her books, and it was just such a nice, comforting feel to have an author that I'm familiar with, and I kind of know her formula, and I kind of know almost a bit of what to expect. Sometimes people don't like that because it's a little too predictable. I love that because it just gives me a little bit of comfort when I'm in those reading slumps. So this was great to just have these books to read. And so I'm gonna go ahead and go through. I'm just going to put in a bit of a spoiler warning here because I'm going to be sharing some information. I was already slightly spoiled a bit when I borrowed these because she was asking me some questions about what, you didn't read this one? What, the one with this and this and this? I was like, no. So I already kind of knew what I was getting into a little bit. And of course it's Nora Roberts. So when it's Nora Roberts, you kind of know what you're getting into, especially when it's a romance. You know it's going to be some couples who get together, fall in love, and it's usually happily ever after. But I just do want to warn you that my journal spreads for this one just might be a bit more spoilerly than usual. Going to the first one, The Stars of Fortune. So this is the first in the trilogy. I'm going to end up recording a video about my thoughts, so that should be posted at some point in the future, so keep an eye out on my thoughts. But here I did do a journal spread, which is the first one, and then I had like this cool sticker washi tape that I use. I have a whole roll of the washi tape here, and I just thought it's so fitting because it says reach for the stars, and that's what they're searching for in this story. Is they're searching for some stars as part of a legend. So and that's literally what it's called, Stars of Fortune. So I did like a little drawing here. I had some issues with the hands, but hands are not my strong suit in drawing, but I actually think I did a pretty good job there. And then I like my little mermaid there, just a little bit of elements of each of the characters in the story. So I just had fun doing all of that. And then this one very heavily centered on Sasha Riggs and Brian Killian as our main couple. Definitely 5 stars because most of Nora reads for me is 5 stars because I love her writing. I love her stories. I love all of it. It's just such good stories. But that is the first one, and then I flipped over to the second one, which was The Bay of Sighs. The Bay of Sighs is this one here, and this is the second in the trilogy, which typically when it comes to the second in the trilogy, sometimes you're like, it's kind of lacking some things, it's kind of like, it's just filler. But I find, and perhaps this is just, you know, my thoughts, but I find when it comes to Nora Roberts, she doesn't really have too much filler. I mean, I find that her second books are a story all in their own because each book usually in her trilogy is like its own little arc because they're romances at the center of it. They're very much like a romance between the couples, and so we do get to see like that couple get together. So that's where I just find like it is a little bit of its own little story. But then this one of course had this whole other thing going on where they're collecting the stars, they're dealing with like evil and things like that. There's like mermaids happening as of my spread here. Like there's a whole world, like it's a whole magical thing, and I love it. I love it so much. But this is what I did. I definitely had struggled again, even more so with the hands on this one. I don't know if it was just how small it was, but they were coming out looking horrible. I have a picture here of like one that I just totally screwed up on, but I like how it turned out because I think that's pretty good considering I was struggling so hard with the hands. But the Annika was my absolute favorite character in the series. Absolutely loved her, and like I like this little washi tape I used, kind of the pretty color. Again, used the Reach for the Stars one here, and then I just had like it kind of, you know, cohesive with this so that it's like part of the trilogy. And then the final book in the trilogy is The Island of Glass. So I very much went with like the glass themes, which I forgot to mention. That's what I did. I did the fire kind of color here with like some kind of red color. I did the blue for like the water, because each of the stars has like a different element essentially, and then ice for the last one for the Island of Glass. And then this one also has a lot of Irish theme, because they go to Ireland, and she very much has a lot of Irish in her stories. I do find like some of her fantasy especially, she does tie into Ireland a lot, so it's always just really fun to see. But this was a really good book too. We've got like the wolf howling at the moon and things. This one was centered on Riley as the character, and Doyle as well. And it was just a very satisfying ending. I almost didn't want it to end. It was one of those books where it was like, no, I'm having so much fun just reading about these characters, seeing them all interact, like just everything, the love they all share. So it was sad to say goodbye to this series, but I really did enjoy this trilogy, and it was very fun, and I had a lot of fun with it. So those were all of the books that I read for the month of September. They're all listed there. And then we're gonna get into my October TBR. So here we are. We've got my October that I've started. So this is still got lots to fill out in this reading journal, but we've got my October cover page. I have changed up a little bit based on some of my others. Usually my TBR is like at the end of the last month. So like for example, here's my September TBR, and there's like my August, end of my August reads. So sometimes, you know, it's just kind of the way it works out. But in this case, I had full 2-page spreads for all of these books that I read in September. So I didn't have that extra page left. So what I ended up doing was just having a little section down here. Put my little TBR section down here at the bottom with just like the TBR. These are the 4 books that I have on my TBR. I'll go ahead and kind of go through those a little bit, but this is my October. I kind of liked this little thing I had in my craft paper that said being wicked is more fun. I just thought that fit with like the spooky theme of October. And I just used, you know, craft paper, a gel pen, make a little spider and stuff like that, especially since we got like spiders in this craft paper. So just tying it all together, right? And I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna put up here yet. That's why I've kind of left it blank, because I might just put like quote for the day and then have my quote that I sometimes have. I might just put books read, if there's any extra books maybe that I read on top of this. I don't know yet. That's why it's kind of just blank here. And I did have this, there was the craft paper, and I had just written out TBR, and then I didn't quite like how it looked because it blended in too much with the background. So then that's where I just put the craft paper, because that's what you do sometimes when it comes to using journals and reading journals and bullet journals and things like that. If you make a mistake, you just, you know, use some craft paper and cover it up, or find creative ways to, you know, just incorporate that happy little accident into something that maybe makes the page even more fun. So that's, yes, so there we go. And then I've got lots of room, like I said, to go ahead and write out what I'm going to read in October. But for my October TBRs, I've got my book club choice, which is Bad Monkey by Carl Hiaasen, and this one I just picked because it was the cheaper of the 2 options and the one that was available. So the other option was only in hardback for like 30 bucks, and this one was like $17 paperback. So I was like, yeah, I'll go with the paperback. And this one also, it sounds fun. It's a bit of sounds like a bit of a murder mystery, but like a kind of detective, more mystery, and kind of like maybe a bit of like a buddy read. I don't know quite yet though. We'll kind of see. It might just be a why done it, but I'm not sure. I just do know when I looked at the reviews, it was going on about like how funny it was, and it even does have something here about like a comedic marvel. So maybe it'll be a light comedy read in my spooky season, but it's also got like some, you know, murder elements too. So we'll see how this one is. Definitely a bright theme for October, which is fun. And then we get into some of my other reads, which if you saw my August haul video, then you'll see I mentioned some of these. But we've got Verity by Colleen Hoover. I've read a few Colleen Hoover books, so I'm excited to get into this one. I've seen a lot of things about this one. A lot of people seem to love this one. It is a thriller-like story, so I think that might be fitting for the month of October to have like a bit of a thriller. So interested to see what this one's like. And then we've got The Witches of Moonshine Manor, and I'm really interested to see this one. This one's definitely got that like witchy kind of spooky vibe going on, and I'm really excited for this one, especially since I just watched Hocus Pocus 2 that just came out not too long ago on Disney Plus, so definitely check that out if you are a Hocus Pocus fan and you have Disney Plus. Then I encourage you to check it out because that was a fun read, but it's definitely gives me that like witchy kind of vibes, and I'm not quite sure what this book is about because it was kind of an impulse buy at a Shoppers Drug Mart, but I think it's just fitting for October. Read about some witches in the month of October. And then my final book that I'm very excited to read is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So this one very much has been sitting on like waiting to get my hands on a copy, and then finally I was going to order it by paperback, but it wasn't going to be released until March, and then I saw this one and I was just like I was having issues pre-ordering it, so I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna get this copy, and I love it. I love it. It's a very, very pretty copy. Yeah, very, very pretty with the special edition, but I'm very excited to read. I love V.E. Schwab, Victoria Schwab. I've got a few books from her, you know, The Near Witch, The Archived. I've, you know, read some of her other books, Gallant, things like that. Those ones are definitely more spooky, I think, than this one is. Those would definitely be more like Halloween-esque. But I do know that this one is still supposed to be a really good read, and it does have a little bit of spookiness because we're dealing with like a demon or something, and like V.E. Schwab tends to have kind of spooky themes, like ghostly like themes throughout her novels, so we'll kind of see if it fits in at all, or it might be completely different. Who knows? I will have to wait and find out. But those are the ones I have so far on my TBR for October. So that is what I'm going to read in the month of October, and this is my beautiful spread that I started in my theme with the craft paper and stuff, so we'll carry that theme throughout, but we shall see. Like, I've got like little washi tape and stuff, just lots of fun. So that was my month of September. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. I thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourselves, and you will see me and maybe some books that I read next time. Bye!